we have made a system which is now encouraging our athletes to not care if they win or lose the game. I don't lie. I tell the truth. The truth sometimes stings a bit. Tournaments are a detriment to our kids' health, and they don't make us better soccer players. Let me give this whole system a grade. F. You suck. All right, there you are. Here I am once again. This is Unleashed. I'm Eric Wynalda, brought to you by our friends at Calafino. Here's some advice. Why don't you make them your friends too? It would be a good move. Absolutely adore them, love them, and love what we're doing here. Okay, so this is just a quick clip to address some of the people who have been hitting me up lately. Some crossover too from my friends on X, also GOLZ TV and YouTube, but I've really been encouraged by some of the responses. Some people don't get it yet, and that's fine. It's all part of the education process because we do things very differently in this country. So there's a lot of folks out there who are digesting this information and just really not knowing what to do with it. I don't lie. I tell the truth. The truth sometimes stings a bit. And it certainly will be a catalyst in you never getting hired within the system that we currently operate in. Just a word to the wise. All right, so Ralph Breaks the Internet decided to chime in with some of my comments about Europe because we have so many different teams winning in Europe, question mark. He has a problem with a comment that I made about accountability. Atlanta's coach very recently said he was frustrated with his players for just being frustrated. He wanted anger. He wanted them to be very different in the way that they're coping with the fact that they can't win a damn soccer game. And my response to that was, then go somewhere else. Go to another country where accountability is real. It's not here. And to defend some of those players and some of the mentality or the culture that we have created in this country, these kids have been programmed to feel frustrated after a game. They don't get mad. They didn't lose anything. It's just the way it is. That's the way it always will be until things change. So when we talk about some of these games and what matters, what doesn't matter, results don't matter, it's all a part of our culture now. I mean, for Christ's sake, Major League Soccer has now implemented through their MLS Next program this system where we grade players. We don't talk about who won or lost. We don't even discuss that. We put them on a rating system where we essentially evaluate their performance. These are all words that are just bullshit that you put in a PowerPoint presentation to convince people to hire you, but this is part of the problem. It really is. Everywhere else in the world, winning does matter. And we have made a system which is now encouraging our athletes to not care if they win or lose the game. They're more interested in what the metrics say and whether the computers or AI or whatever the hell, that not soccer people that know how to operate these things, not people who actually watch a soccer game and can decipher who's a good player and who's not. They have come up with a methodology, I should say, of utilizing the metrics to determine whether the player is good or bad. And then that grade comes out. Let me give this whole system a grade. F. You suck. That's stupid. It's never going to work. And you've got other countries laughing at us. So let's get back to Ralph Broke the Internet. You only have like 450 followers, dude. So I don't think anything is ever going to really break the internet. It's a cute little way to introduce yourself, but I'll read the rest of this. No, actually, I'm not going to read the rest of it. You get the picture. Basically, the point is that he likes the way we do things in this country because there's parity and because of the fact that in Europe, there's only 5 or 6 teams winning something. And that's the way it always is. But in the bigger scheme or the bigger, I want to say scheme, but the bigger picture, what you are seeing is players who are incrementally getting better because they have aspirations and this weird thing called ambition. And at some point in their youth, they had this thing called accountability, which is why they're good now. It's the way the world works. I mean, you could talk about who wins what, and you can start coming to all these theories. I've loved these theories recently where Arsenal's getting beat up. And it's really unfair. And Mikel Arteta, for what it's worth, he's only won 1 trophy now, right? 1 in 6 years. And that's a part of the process. You have to trust the process. And then Crystal Palace goes and does what they did this past weekend, beating Man City 1-0. Whether you think Henderson was outside the box or not, whether that should have been a red card, I actually, unfortunately, think that should have been a sending off offense. But ultimately, the game is over, and Crystal Palace wins the FA Cup. And then, of course, Nketiah, who played for Arsenal last year, and moved to Crystal Palace, for hardly played, was a huge disappointment, is now winning a trophy. So all the Arsenal fans are all bitter, and everybody likes on the outside of Arsenal, likes to point it out when this kind of shit happens to Arsenal. And then there's Calafiori, right, who came from Bologna to Arsenal to win something. And of course, you guessed it, Bologna wins the cup for the first time in 51 years. Crystal Palace, first time in forever they've never won a major cup. Man, I just feel bad for Arsenal fans right now because it's rough. It's hard. But no, that's why we play the game. Ralph broke the internet. The reason why we do things the way that we do, well, I'm not saying we as an American, but the 100+ years of trial and error that have now put a system in place that works, that actually produces great players, and then is a system that we can all understand and enjoy, and players can have ambition and understand their role as an asset for their club and the realities of going on to bigger and better things. It's just the way it works. The way that I guess, Ralph, you want this to work is you want everybody to be on the same plane, and you want to marry yourself to mediocrity, and then you're going to watch those guys battle it out. Okay, I don't. If that's what you want to do, great. Save your opinions. I know this is hard for you, but this is not a very intelligent response. Sorry. It's just an ignorant response to say that you don't like the way things work in the rest of the world, so you want to create your own little bubble. You're in a bubble, dude. But thanks for sending me a note, and I hope this helps. I'm not trying to hurt your feelings. I'm not trying to tell you that you're an idiot, but I think I just did. So deal with it. All right, I didn't know this was going to happen this way. This is another episode of Unleashed. I am Eric Wynalda. You can see Calafino is still here. This program is brought to you by our good friends at Calafino, and my advice always is to try to be friends with them. It's a good idea. It's a good move. Trust me. It's going to work out for you. All right, so this is in response to an episode that we had about a month and a half ago about tournaments. Now, one of the things that I tried to convey to people is that this is a business. In the United States, very different than everywhere else in the world, we love our tournaments. They are a huge thing to all of us. Now, most of the people that, especially are the kids who are being introduced to the game for the first time, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9-year-olds, this is great. This is fun. It's a cool schedule. We play at 10, and then we play at 3, and then let's get some rest. And then if we beat these guys, then we'll play at 8 o'clock tomorrow. If we lose, we play at 10, and then the tournament's over. But, that sound like fun? Yeah, it sounds great to a bunch of young kids, and parents who don't know any better are being introduced to the sport for the first time. They engage in these activities because, again, they don't know any better. When the kids are young, it's okay. My issue was, and I don't want people to be confused, is once the kids get a little bit older, 15, 16, 17, it is counterproductive. I think everyone would agree with this, but if you're not seeing it firsthand, then sometimes you ask the wrong questions. And a few of you did, and I'll get to that in a second. A few people chimed in saying, what are you beating up on tournaments for? They're great for kids, and they're great for the sport, and you're just bitter. Now, okay, no, I'm not. I'm just trying to point out the fact that this is an overload on these kids' bodies right in the middle of a growth period that could prove to be very dangerous. Now, there's a couple of reasons why it's counterproductive to the soccer getting better. The first one, let's put that up, is the kids pace themselves. Okay, now some of you are saying, so what? Big deal. You probably are NBA fans. Like, you watch those guys play and how many nights they take off. Yeah, that's a cultural thing in sports where we got a busy week. I got to get through it, so I'm not going to give it all up in the first game because I've got another game. And then if there's a third game, I certainly don't want to have used up all of my energy. I want to be ready for that. What ends up happening when you pace yourself is you never play the game at a high level. And that it's really difficult for us to expect these kids when they finally get put in a real environment, which is really competitive, and they can't go full tilt. They just haven't before. And then when they make mistakes, when they go full tilt, when they're going full speed, sometimes they just don't have the skill set to do it. These are things that tournaments, unfortunately, condition our players to play a certain way. And so habitually, they become very average. And they're not doing that on purpose. They're just dealing with the circumstances that we put in front of them. And tournaments are not the way that we need to be developing soccer players. End of story. I've said this before, and I'm getting a response. The name is escaping me right now, but I'm remembering all these responses. And some of you are like, wow, I never thought about it that way. That's really interesting. Tell me more. And this is the reason why I'm doing this. But when you play in these kind of competitions and you watch this battle of attrition, if you will, and then it finally gets to a final, I've said before that the scouts aren't even there. If you're really looking at this as an opportunity for your child to go to a tournament to be seen, think again. That's not the way this works, especially with all of the technology that we have now, that we can watch any game anywhere, and all of the companies that make it really accessible for coaches and or scouts to watch whether the kids are talented or not. To think that you're playing in this competition to be seen, right? Even if it's on some sort of device that is at the game, and then we're able to view it later. If the kids aren't playing at full speed, they're not impressing anybody. They're taking sand to the beach. It's just everybody stuck in third gear, and nobody is showing us any special quality. That's certainly not going to impress anybody that's going to eventually hire you if you are a player that is aspiring to be a pro someday, and or to get you a scholarship to go to a college where they want to win. It's a really difficult thing for people to understand, but pacing yourself through these kind of competitions is really why the soccer suffers sometimes. The second reason is just the physicality of this. This is really dangerous. We are asking way too much for these young bodies to compete at a high level, and or even if it's at third gear, as I called it. But to play that many games in succession is really dangerous for the human body. That thing, wear and tear, it's a thing. It's a thing. The reason why I have such a problem with tournaments is that this isn't a way to define the player, and this isn't a way to train the player. And it certainly isn't the way they do things in Europe. Europe will laugh at you if it's Germany, France, Spain, England, it doesn't matter. They're never playing back-to-back games. Why? Because they actually value recovery. Recovery is a necessary part of being able to participate in the next game. And if your body is building up so much lactic acid and not given or afforded enough time to get it out, no matter how much water or Gatorade you think is going to help, you are never going to be in tip-top condition and playing the game at a high level. And that's why when we look at the way that the structure of things is very different in other places, is that everything is about the game. Everything is about one game in 1 week. One game. That's it. Yeah, obviously, sometimes these schedules get a little compacted, and you have to play on a Wednesday and a Sunday, and then maybe even on the next Wednesday. That's what that whole thing rotation is about. Because the human body, even though old school 80s and 90s, we'd play right through it and then just fall apart. We understand now the physicality of the game and what is required to play this game at a high level. Pacing yourself, great. You could probably get through it, but it's still a little bit dangerous. But when you play the game at a high level, there's a couple of things going on. One, you are never slowing down. You are never pacing yourself, if you will, through a match. And what that means is your body is starting to learn how to endure some of the physical aspects of the game, which are necessary to play at a high level. But then again, the skill and the technique necessary to play at that speed, if you've never done it before, you could tell. I mean, I can tell. Scouts can tell. But it's a necessary part. The other part is if you didn't earn your spot, everybody knows how this works in America as far as clubs. Everybody's got to get playing time, and parents get upset because they're paying for a service and they want to know why their kid didn't play. See, Europe doesn't do that. Other places don't do that. Argentina doesn't do that. If you made the team, you made the team. If you're only going to play for 17 minutes, make the most of those 17 minutes. And maybe it'll be 30 next week, but incrementally you're getting better. The most important part about it is that the game is paramount. Everything goes into the game, the preparation, the planning, the coaching, all of the nutrition that is necessary, and the recovery. So when we look at what tournaments provide, they just try to pack it in so they can make as much money as possible and collect on the kickback from the hotel that you stayed in. Not a big fan of it. I'm not a big fan of it. I'm not trying to beat it up, and I am cognizant of a lot of people who run these businesses, run these tournaments, and I know how much money you're making. And until somebody says something about the realities of it, it's never going to get better. Sorry, I dropped my phone. I think if we were to really reevaluate this, you'd probably end up getting more. Unfortunately, you get more people that would be against it, which is what I'm seeing. There's so many people that it's like, why are you coming down on tournaments? Tournaments are a detriment to our kids' health, and they don't make us better soccer players. And at the end of the day, you get hit the hardest in your wallet. And it's never fun on the Monday, Tuesday to look at that credit card bill and say, wait, what? It's very different in other places. I hope it changes. I don't think it will, but that's the answer to your response. All right, since we're sharing here on Unleashed, I'm going to do something the complete opposite of what most people would do. And this is me sharing something that happened to me a couple of years ago when I was coaching here in Las Vegas. So I'm going to show you a video, and this is essentially me getting attacked by two 16-year-old boys. Now, there's a couple of things. Let me stop it right there. Because if you look at my positioning, once they identify me, there I am. Okay, coaches out there, I've got a problem with this, and I need to get better. I'm too close to the field. I really am too close to the field. Now, in this scenario, you go ahead and roll the tape again. In this scenario, I was accused of saying something to one of the players, okay? And unfortunately, we could only show you the actual video footage of this, but it was so windy on the day that you couldn't hear what was actually said. So I'm going to share the truth with you. So this is me telling you exactly what happened. Flash backwards. This is my son playing in this game. That's him getting the ball in the wing. Now, this is only one play, right? This is only one play. But what happened to my son is really unfortunate. And I do happen to think that because he happens to be my son, Eric Wynalda's son, unfortunately, with that name on his back and that target on his back as well, this is probably why this happened. But watch the play. Now, that's one of 5 tackles, right, that he had to endure on the day. Now, here's the problem. TMZ grabbed this and said that I was the abuser. Now, after that tackle, what you can't hear is my voice saying to my son, "Are you okay?" And he's out of picture. You can't see him. "Are you okay? Are you okay?" And he shakes his head as if to say, "I don't know." And then he doesn't give me a clear answer. I say, "I'm taking your ass out." That's what I said to my son. My son. That's what you can't see or hear. Now, the boy that approaches me first thinks that I said it to the other kid. And I say to him in that moment, "Sorry, that wasn't for you." And that's the last time you will hear my voice. I don't say anything else to these two boys. But as you can see, here it goes. So I'm still, again, coaches, just get away. I did not say anything. The kid's approaching me. I said to the ref, I said, "Look, I didn't say anything. I don't know what's going on. Both my hands are up." And obviously this ensues. The kid pushes me, and the other kid broke my Ray-Bans, by the way. When he throws the ball in my face, play that again. Right there. Yeah, that hurt, actually. Had a little mark. Anyway, both of those kids were suspended, and I was red carded for that, which was a little unfair, I must say. I put myself in a bad spot by being too close to the field. I can put my hand up with, and I'll hold myself accountable for that. I do have a history with this. I got red carded in a USL game. I can't remember the opponent. I do remember the referee, who I got to see a couple of weeks ago. Sorry, I forgot your name. I really did. I should know your name, but I really cared that little about you. But he ended up red carding me because I had come out of my my technical area in a professional game, which is a no-no. But when I turned around and I walked back to the bench, I was making fun of myself. And I pretended like I was blind and I needed a cane. Okay, probably in bad taste. I get it. And I shouldn't have done that. My players laughed. They unfortunately had the camera on me. This pompous-ass referee decided that he was going to come red card me for that because he thought I was talking about him being the blind one, even though I was making fun of my age and my inability to stay within the technical area. All right, let's go back to the problem here. I was almost suspended from soccer as a coach because some of these children, right, were actually showing pictures of their faces and how they had scratches on them, and they filed a police report against me as if to try and get me kicked out of the league or whatever. This was a state cup final, by the way. Our team ended up winning the game. It was a little easier after they had suffered 2 red cards. Both of those kids got red carded. I don't think any of our kids got a red card, but it made it easier. We were already up 1-0. We won the game 2-0, I think. It's hard to play with 9 men. However, they went to such an extent to try to go to the police department. I got a phone call from the police as I was exiting the field asking me to come back because they wanted to tell me that I had abused some children. This went on TMZ. TMZ grabbed this. I don't know if I should sue them because they were totally misinformed. So anyway, I said, no, we've got this whole thing on video. And when TMZ finds this video, it's because I provided it. Not to defend myself, maybe to defend myself. I can't imagine if I didn't have this video. I can't imagine what would have happened because in the game, we have on audio the other coach yelling out to his players, pegale el pinche güero, which means hit the fucking white boy. Now, I just want you to try and think about that for a second. What if Eric Wynalda on the sidelines said, hit that fucking Mexican? I think we all know what would happen. But we all know now, for the first time, what didn't happen. Nobody got reprimanded over there. Nobody for their inclusion, even trying to throw me in jail. Nobody. And once they realized that a false police report, now it's up to me if I want to file charges against you for essentially filing a false police report. And it's up to me whether I want to pursue this. I chose not to for all the obvious reasons. I just don't, I think some people were a little bit, let's just say inebriated and were acting in not the right way. I'm just going to be as nice as I possibly can. But that coach yelling out those instructions, the worst part about it for me, and this is the legal component of this, is our state association allowed that coach to not only continue, but when another team decided not to go to Hawaii for the regionals, they rewarded that team. The name of that team, by the way, is Diversity, which is kind of ironic, I guess, because it's just a bunch of Mexicans. When my team actually had 2 Mexicans, a Guatemalan, an El Salvadorian, a Brazilian, a couple American kids, a Japanese kid, and a Mormon. How's that for diverse? Maybe we should swap names or something. Either way, our state association here in Nevada chose to do nothing outside of reward this team by letting them take that vacancy and helped fund their trip to Hawaii. And all the while, the coach that was on the sidelines was not even able to provide any documentation that said that he was Safe Sport approved. Do you realize what a lawsuit this is? Do you realize how bad this is? Does the State Association of Nevada realize how bad their behavior is? I don't know. But this is the reason why I'm addressing this. Not to defend myself, because nothing came of it. The whole point was to get me to quit, and they succeeded. I did. I quit. I am no longer a part of it. And to find out that later, much later, that this was an orchestrated attack by some individuals who just wanted my presence no longer in youth soccer. It's pretty sad. It's sad. But I did want to come clean on this. I don't exonerate myself from blame. I really don't. I think my behavior was exemplary in the sense that I didn't react, but the whole point was to get me to react. I guess they thought that I was going to actually respond to that, or maybe strike a child, or do something which they felt would have been in character, which would be completely out of my character to ever do something like that. Either way, I thought you'd have some fun with that. That's TMZ, and that's the video of an altercation that I had in Las Vegas a couple of years ago. I don't know what the statute of limitations is on this, but I think I'm going to look into that.